said.
This is an NBC News special report. Here's Tom Yamas.
And good afternoon. We are coming on the air with breaking news. NBC News has just learned that President Trump's former national security advisor, John Bolton, has just been indicted by a federal grand jury. That, according to a senior official in the department. Bolton has become a prominent political foe of the president after he was pushed out of his role during the president's first term. Today's indictment comes weeks after the FBI searched his home in Maryland as part of a national security investigation back in August related to classified records. This is just the latest against the president's political enemies after the Justice Department's former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James were also indicted. I want to go straight to our chief White House correspondent, Peter Alexander. Peter, we should be very upfront with our viewers here. We just got this information. I know there's a lot we still don't know, but we can confirm that John Bolton has been indicted.
Yeah, let's tell you exactly what we do know. A senior Justice Department official tells me just moments ago that the former national security advisor to Donald Trump during his first term, John Bolton, has been indicted by a federal grand jury in the state of Maryland. As you noted in the introduction to this conversation, court documents made public last month revealed that Bolton was under criminal investigation for alleged mishandling of classified documents. And significantly, this marks now the third individual that the president has described as a political adversary who has now been indicted by the Trump Justice Department in the course of the last several weeks. Of course, first we heard the former FBI Director James Comey, who denies the allegations against him. Separately, as you see there, Letitia James, the New York Attorney General, who denies the charges against her as they relate to fraud, specifically mortgage fraud. Now, the third example, of course, as we're reporting right now, is that John Bolton, who has had a fierce back and forth with the president since his departure here. In his book, his memoir, he described the president as being unfit to serve in this job. The president, for his part, has been very public about his vow of retribution, campaigned on the idea. And even just yesterday, where he was in the Oval Office side by side with his FBI Director, Kash Patel, and the department and the Attorney General, the Justice Department's lead figure, Pam Bondi, the president said in simplest of terms, I hope they are looking at all these people, naming an additional 4 individuals, including California Senator Adam Schiff is a name that he wanted the Justice Department to look into. So there are a lot of questions about where the line, the independence of the Justice Department is now being drawn, given the fact that the president has been so public about those comments, including earlier comments just a couple of weeks ago, where in a post that the president didn't realize was public, he thought it was a direct message, he called on Pam Bondi, his Attorney General, to prosecute several of those individuals, including Bolton, James, and Comey itself. We should note the president was just asked about this a moment ago, asked about John Bolton, not specifically asked about the indictment. It's not clear, since the president was speaking when this indictment came down, that he is aware of that just yet. But here's part of what the president said to reporters in the Oval Office just moments ago. Listen.
I didn't know that. You told me for the first time, but I think he's, a bad person. I think he's a bad guy. Yeah, he's a bad guy. It's too bad, but that's the way it goes. That's the way it goes, right? That's the way it goes. Will I what?
Have you reviewed the case against him?
No, I haven't. But I just think he's a bad person. Okay, anybody else?
So to be clear, Bolton's lawyer, Abby Lowell, has not yet responded to our request for a comment. We have heard from Lowell in recent days saying that his client did nothing wrong and basically defending his reputation fiercely amid these charges right now. But the president's efforts to pursue these charges widely focus on a variety of means by which he has done that, including as it related to Comey and Letitia James in the Eastern District of Virginia, which is based just across the river from Washington, D.C., removing a prosecutor who had been in that post, who had been reluctant to move forward with these charges, and installing a separate Trump ally, a former close aide to the president's, to serve in that job. And very shortly after her arrival there, despite no experience pursuing or prosecuting any cases of this kind, she did pursue and ultimately get those indictments from a grand jury related to both Comey and Letitia James. Tom.
All right, Peter Alexander, for us to give you a sense of President Trump's relationship with John Bolton. Bolton. On his first day in office, within hours of becoming the president after he was inaugurated, he pulled Secret Service protection from John Bolton, who had been the target of a murder-for-hire plot from Iran. So clearly the president there, not a fan of John Bolton. I want to bring in Laura Jarrett here. Laura, from the search warrant, we've gotten some information about what this investigation was about. It was about a 2020 book pre-publication review that was under review by obviously people in the State Department and other bodies, and a hack of Bolton's AOL account by foreign entities. What more do we know from that?
Yeah, we should help people understand. John Bolton has been under investigation for multiple different administrations, right? He was investigated first dating back to Bill Barr under the first Trump administration. That investigation continued into the Biden administration, and then the Biden DOJ dropped it. Now, what exactly the charges is, we're going to have to wait and see the charging papers.
Yeah.
Peter has obviously reported that the grand jury has returned that indictment, which is significant. We should also note the difference here between the indictments of other Trump foes, like Letitia James and former FBI Director James Comey. Here, there was a raid on his home, on his office. That means that there was probable cause, that a judge found, an independent judge found, that a probable cause that a crime had been committed. You can't get a search warrant like that. You can't carry out boxes and documents and take someone's phone without probable cause. So that's a difference between these cases that we should note.
And that this investigation started in the first Trump administration.
Yeah.
The Biden administration then looked into this, dropped this, and then it was reopened in the second Trump term.
And the question is, what did they find to reopen that investigation? And perhaps this isn't related to the book. For a long time, there have been questions about whether he had mishandled classified information, whether leaked information to reporters, put things in the book that he shouldn't have. He was tasked with safeguarding our nation's most secret information. And the question was, did he share it in a way? Did he hoard the information in a way? What exactly happened? It appears, according to the warrants, warrants that we saw, that it actually related to a hack of his AOL account. So the question was he typing out drafts of things in his AOL account? There had been some reporting that he was almost keeping a running diary while working in the White House.
Every day, maybe. Yeah.
That would be quite serious if, in fact, that's what he's indicted for.
And he was posting this on AOL. And it's interesting, right? Because
or keeping drafts, like we all do, except this was with classified information,
right.
At least according to prosecutors. That's what we think this is about.
And you would think if the allegations are true, he would have known better, because John Bolton is not somebody who came from the business world or from the MAGA world. He had been in the White House and public life almost his entire adult life.
Former UN ambassador.
The Reagan administration, the first Bush administration. He worked for President Trump, State Department. They worked in the UN. I mean, he had kind of been all around. He had been around the block, so he would know these things.
Absolutely.
But you can also be careless, and if you are careless, if the allegations are true, sometimes they can be criminal.
Well, look, when you occupy a position like National Security Advisor, you actually sign a document saying that you're going to safeguard your secrets. You're going to actually keep things safe. You're going to keep them in a secure location. And so he certainly knew. The question is whether any of the material we were talking about was actually classified. He has maintained for years that nothing in his book was classified. He said that he got a waiver.
He got it reviewed, and that's the process.
He got it reviewed, but there were lengthy negotiations. Remember, the president actually sued to try to get his book stopped before it was published. Wasn't successful, but we will have to see what the indictment actually charges.
I want to bring in NBC News Justice reporter Ryan Riley to kind of walk us through this a little bit. Ryan, our viewers at home, we're trying to get as much information as we can. We can confirm that he has been indicted. We don't know the charges yet or the counts just yet. I'm sure that'll come in time. These documents sometimes hit a sort of federal database called PACER. We can then draw from that. We're still waiting on a lot of information. We're also watching John Bolton's home to see if anything happens there, possibly if investigators go in, if he is arrested, if he comes out and makes a statement. This is his front door right now. We have live cameras outside of his house. Ryan, I know you've been working your sources. What have you learned?
Yeah, so the docket has been created itself, but we don't know the actual charges yet on PACER. So basically, we know that this case has been brought forward as Peter first reported here. And to get to Laura's point, this case is a little bit different from those cases against the other two Trump enemies that he has targeted, because there is a history of bringing forward these types of cases involving classified documents. Most famously, recently, of course, against the now sitting president and related to the search of his home in Mar-a-Lago. So there is a history of them taking very seriously these allegations of mishandling of classified documents and classified information. Those are prosecutions we see on a regular basis, whereas the case that has been brought against James Comey and Letitia James are in a separate category. Especially those mortgage cases are very rarely brought. So, this is a complicated matter, but as Laura pointed to, because there was this judge that signed off on this search, that had to meet a certain threshold. But still, the grand jury process is this lower threshold than convincing a jury unanimously that an individual committed a crime beyond a reasonable doubt. So this is a multi-step process. And of course, I would expect that we would see his lawyers argue that John Bolton's lawyers argue that this case was poisoned by Donald Trump's comments, and any comments that he continues to make about that are certainly something I think that we'll see, Tom, come up in the future.
Yeah, and then Ryan, we should also point out the Justice Department has had a lot of experience on classified documents and these investigations over the last two administrations, both with President Trump and President Biden both being charged and investigated.
Yeah, right. So, Biden was investigated for this as well. And of course, then there's the Hillary Clinton investigation as well, just to bring this back to the beginning of Donald Trump's coming to office during the 2016 campaign. So, yes, there have been a history of them investigating these classified documents across the board for very prominent individuals, including, of course, the president and the former president, Joe Biden, who was under investigation and related to documents that in his garage.
Yeah, Ryan Riley for us. Ryan, we appreciate that. I want to bring back Laura here as we're waiting on information. We expect to hear the charges. We're just seconds away from getting that information. We should point out for our viewers here, too, the information in some of this investigation starts with the CIA director, John Ratcliffe, providing to Kash Patel some intelligence saying that they should possibly look into this. And then the investigation gets started from there, or we should say restarted.
Well, and that's why it would make sense that it doesn't have to do with the book. It has to do with the hack of an AOL account by a foreign adversary. And you might wonder, how did we know that his AOL account was hacked? Was that because we were monitoring the foreign adversary? There's all kinds of interesting questions there that are, I'm sure, about to emerge. But we should just mention, in terms of how people should be thinking about these classified documents investigations, because we've seen it from the president, the current president, we've seen it from the former president, we've seen it from the Hillary Clinton email investigation, of course, infamous. Biden and Clinton did not face charges. The president did. And part of the standard there for prosecutors is, what did the person intend? What was their level of knowing? Was it sort of an incidental mishandling, or was it deliberate? In the case of former President Trump, that's what was alleged by the special counsel Jack Smith. And so if in fact that's what Bolton has been charged with here, looking to see exactly how prosecutors know that this was intentional is going to be important.
The classified documents, I mean, is this something that he could face prison time over?
Absolutely.
Again, we don't know what the charges are yet.
Significant prison time. Not
talk
just
to me about that.
Yeah, we're talking about decades if convicted. The willful retention of classified documents, the obstruction of justice, if in fact there's any of that, is we're talking about serious federal crimes that, again, a grand jury would have had to find probable cause, not beyond a reasonable doubt like a trial, but probable cause that a crime has been committed. Now, we need to obviously see if there was, in fact, an indictment returned on all of the charges. We remember, at least in the case of James Comey, right, just a couple weeks ago, the grand jury actually did not indict on some of the charges that the prosecutor put up. And so that's why it's so important to actually see the physical document.
We should also point out the FBI interviews John Bolton
eight
times, right, between, I think it's 2020 and 2025. So he has spoken to investigators.
And so if he made any statements that the prosecutors now believe were false, that's another potential charge that we commonly see in these types of cases.
And then when we also talk about some of the documents they took out, because we have that video and they're taking out boxes and boxes and hard drives, phones as well. This is when the FBI was at his house in August. Some of the documents that we've understood were described as weapons of mass destruction, classified documents, U.S. government strategic communications plan, confidential documents, travel memo documents with pages labeled secret, and confidential documents with headings that have been redacted in some cases. So this seems like incredibly important documents. And if they were indeed classified, he's going to have a tough case.
Well, and it's a question of always in front of a jury to try to explain, why did you take these documents? Why do you have these materials? Trying to explain that to a jury, I think, is always a challenge in these types of cases. Now, obviously, he was the national security advisor. This isn't a case. Well, actually, let's go to our chief White House correspondent who has the indictment.
Yep. Hey, Peter, we understand you got into charges. A little more information?
We do, Tom. Again, as we've been reporting here first on NBC News, a federal grand jury in Maryland has now indicted former national security advisor to Donald Trump. And we now know what the two charges are, two separate charges that he is now facing. I'll leave it to Laura to detail the potential ramifications here. The first, transmission of national defense information. The second, retention of national defense information, which in simple terms is, in effect, the accusation that he mishandled classified information here right now. So these two charges we have now learned on which the former national security advisor to Donald Trump in his first term, John Bolton, was indicted. We have reached out again to his team, his attorney, Abby Lowell, for information. We're still waiting for a statement from Bolton's team, but to this point, we can only acknowledge that he has denied, Lowell has denied on multiple occasions, that Bolton did anything wrong.
Okay, Peter, thank you. We're going to break this down with Laura while we still have time here. It sounds like the two, they're separate charges, but they're almost one and the same. The transmission of national defense information and the retention of national defense information.
Yeah,
Walk us through this.
Those are meaningfully different, right? Because if you think about the case of President Trump, he was not charged with transmitting national defense information to anybody. He was charged with essentially hoarding the documents at Mar-a-Lago. So that would be the retention of national defense information. So you think about someone taking things home, keeping things on their computer. It could have been he was taking notes on things. Transmission is a little bit different, and that's what we're going to have to see exactly. What did they find? Was it just the fact that he was keeping it on an unsecure server?
Or emailing himself, maybe?
Or emailing himself, and someone got a hold of it. But that is a meaningfully distinct difference in these two counts. And so we're going to need to see exactly what did the prosecutors find to give them grounds to charge him with those two distinct crimes.
And again, it's important to hammer this home. When you get these jobs, you are told specifically what to do and what not to do when handling classified documents,
and signing documents that saying you are going to abide by all of those rules and that you understand you can be prosecuted if you mishandle these types of documents.
He's been indicted. We know the charges now. Laura, walk us through what we think happens next.
Yeah, so at this point, typically someone would get a call saying your client has been indicted. Your attorney would get a call saying,
Abby Lowell in this case, right?
In this case, who's also representing Tish James, the New York Attorney General, we should mention. And so you would get a summons to come and appear in court, where you would make your first appearance. It would essentially be a formality we've all seen so many times now, where someone comes in and actually has the charges formally announced there in court. Sometimes you see someone enter a plea of not guilty at that point. In other cases, you see an arrest warrant signed. We don't have any indication that that's what happened here, although we haven't yet seen a statement from Abby Lowell or anyone else on Bolton's defense team. But we should mention in the past, he has said that he engaged in no wrongdoing, no mishandling of classified documents. So I assume now that the indictment has been actually publicly released, then we'll see a statement from him, I'm sure.
Abby Lowell is a household name to us because we're in this business and we cover him a lot. Representative Hunter Biden, you just mentioned Letitia James and now John Bolton. Is there a reason why people hire Abby Lowell?
He has quite a bunch of experience. He obviously represented Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, for a period of time. He's well known in Washington circles as someone well versed in this type of case. He has plenty of cases of national defense information and mishandling classified documents under his belt. We're also just getting more information, I should mention, Tom, from our team, that there are 18 counts related to these offenses. And so we're not talking about one document, one time. You typically, in cases like this, you see a count per document. And so that's why, remember, in Trump's case, we saw 32 counts because there were 32 individual documents. And so we have to actually see what the descriptions of those documents are. Usually you don't see the classified information, of course, but you see a description, a header, perhaps. You read out some of those headers that we saw from the search warrants.
We actually, Laura, not to cut you off, but we just gotten the indictment, and now there's a document description. You can walk us through this for the date of transmission, the two counts on that one. The document reveals intelligence about future attacks by an adversarial group in another country. The other document, document B, reveals liaison partners sharing sensitive information with the U.S. intelligence community. There's a lot here, it sounds like, at least in these two counts.
Yeah, it's going to take us a while to sort of parse through this and see exactly what he's been accused of. But there's no question this is a serious indictment involving national security and the alleged mishandling of national security information. And we mentioned before all the number of statements that the president has made about John Bolton and whether those could come into play here, Tom. And the issue is, putting aside what the president has said about him, if in fact the prosecutors can prove prove that he actually mishandled classified information, then all of the statements that the president has made about him, they're going to be cast in a different light than perhaps in a different case, like I mentioned, Comey and Letitia James. I think this is of a different order that I think our viewers should be attuned to. The mishandling of classified documents is very different than failing to put something down on a mortgage application to the tune of 18 grand.
Yeah. It's interesting here because when you're looking at the date of the transmission of these documents that they're alleging the federal government, 2019, the summer of 2019, 2018, going into, then it ends in 2019.
He's national security advisor. Those dates coincide with when he was actually the national security advisor.
It looks like there are dozens of documents that they're looking at now because of the multiple counts here, that it wasn't just sort of one document that they're looking at that they were traced. It looks like there were different plans, different sensitive, again, classified information according to the federal government that was being shared and transmitted here. The indictment itself was 26 pages. We're obviously going through it a lot. I want to meet the press moderator, Kristen Welker. Kristen, John Bolton is somebody that's known very well in Washington. He has spent decades in public service working for several administrations. As I said earlier, he's someone who has been around the block. He knows how classified information works. We're still looking through the indictment right now, but love to get your thoughts on this new indictment.
Well, Tom, it's just an extraordinary moment. This is now, as you have been reporting, the third Trump adversary to be indicted. I had an opportunity to interview President Trump just after he had been elected. I asked him about the fact that he had campaigned on retribution. I asked him what specifically that meant to him. He said his success would be his retribution, that he's not interested in actually going after political foes. And yet legal experts take a look at what's happening now and they say that is what's happening. The fact that he publicly posted what was meant to be a personal message to his Attorney General, Pam Bondi, calling for the indictments of Senator Adam Schiff, of Letitia James, of James Comey, 2 out of 3 of them now indicted. The fact that John Bolton has now been indicted, truly extraordinary. And I do think, taking a step back, that scene in the Oval Office on Wednesday where President Trump was flanked by his Attorney General and FBI director and called for more people to be indicted, including Adam Schiff and Lisa Monaco, the former Deputy Attorney General under Joe Biden. Tom. All
right, Kristen Welker, we thank you for that. Laura, we're reading through this, and it's like the more we read, the more we want to ask.
Yeah.
It sounds like, if you look at page 20, here's what I'm looking at. They accuse him of willfully communicating, delivering, and transmitting documents to a person not entitled to receive it.
Mm-hmm.
So this could mean potentially leaks to either media or leaks to somebody, right?
Leaks perhaps to somebody associated with the publishing of his book. The suggestion was that originally some of the reporting was that he was sort of keeping things, knowing that he was going to write a book, and that perhaps he was exchanging early drafts or exchanging some of the more damning pieces of information according to his view from what was going on. A letter stating that he was doing this with enthusiasm with a literary agent was again exploring a book as part of what's being alleged here, Tom. Again, quite serious mishandling of classified information against the former national security advisor.
Yeah, and they're also pulling transcripts, and looking through this indictment, they're pulling transcripts of him during interviews where he's saying it appears, if this is right, the indictment, if he's quoted correctly, that he made some mistakes. We're going to go through this. We're going to have much more throughout the day. I know you're going to be combing through that indictment with your team. We're going to stay covering this story. More ahead on your local station, our streaming network, of course, NBC News Now, online at NBCnews.com, and a full wrap-up when I see you in just a couple of hours right here on Nightly News. I'm Tom Yamas. We thank you for watching.